Jesus speaks to us about these two people, this tax collector and this Pharisee. Now, we have this image in our mind, of course, of Pharisaism and all this, which of course comes from this time period. But in the time when Jesus was speaking, those who were listening knew that the Pharisees had separated themselves, had put themselves out, had done far more than they usually did to be able to follow the law of God. It was the Pharisees who actually, for the most part, became Christians after the resurrection of Jesus. It was the Pharisees who knew what God's law was and how to live it out. Of course, it was too often just an external observance and not getting to the heart. But they were the ones who would have been seen as the heroes of Judaism in their time. And so Jesus shows that it's not just in doing the outward things, not just outward observance, but really there needs to be this conversion of heart. We see this tax collector, the one who would have most likely have extorted from so many people. But it's this tax collector. It's the quote-unquote good thief who was on the cross next to Jesus. They're the ones that we hear about who are justified because of their recognition that they need mercy. They need mercy. So often in our lives, we get so focused on doing the right things. And don't get me wrong, we're not supposed to do wrong things. We're not supposed to be sinners. We're not supposed to go out and defraud people or kill others or be mean to others. That's not what I'm saying. But ultimately, what gets us justified, what gets us into right relationship with Almighty God, is not that we've earned our way to heaven, but rather we recognize that we are sinners in need of God's mercy. O God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Saint Therese, one of my favorite saints and a doctor of the church, who died back in 1897. She was 24 years old when she died. And she lived out her life living all the little ways, loving God in the small things. In fact, it was St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, that took her name after St. Therese of Lisieux, and also her spirituality of doing everything out of love for God. Well, one of St. Teresa's sisters saw how much she had all these desires for great things, for greatness, for holiness, for great things for loving God. And one of her sisters, who was also a religious sister in her community, was going to her and saying, there's no hope for me. I look at what you do, your great desires, your good works, and there's no way that I can please the good God. And St. Therese says, it's not that. You don't understand me at all. She says, our good works condemn us if we rely on them. Get that? Our good works condemn us if we rely on our good works. She said, it is confidence in God's mercy that is everything. And we look, and Jesus never says, as he's telling this story about the Pharisee, that what he's doing and what he's saying is wrong. He says, okay, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous. Jesus never says, but he was adulterous and greedy and dishonest. No! He says, he fasts twice a week and pays tithes on his whole income. Now, again, that's 10% of all of his earnings he would pay tithes on. And Jesus never says, well, he didn't really do that. He wasn't really fasting twice a week. But rather, it was because he was relying on his good works, as it were, to earn his keep with Almighty God. To earn his keep with Almighty God. To earn love. You can't earn love. The Beatles knew this, right? Can't buy me love. For those of you who are too young to know who the Beatles are, ask your parents. That we can't earn love. Love, by its very definition, is free gift. Is free gift. And God says, I give my love freely to you. Don't feel like you have to earn it. All you have to do is accept it and return it. But not earn it. I think about, that parable where Jesus is talking about the man who ends up owing his master like hundreds of millions of dollars, so to speak. And his master, he says, please give me time and I'll pay it off. And the master's like, no way, you're going to be able to pay it off. Even if you won the Powerball, you wouldn't be able to pay it off. So he says, it says that he forgave the debt. But he went out looking as if he was still going to repay the debt. And we sometimes live our lives as if we have to repay the debt to God instead of receiving the forgiveness and the mercy that He wants to pour into our lives. He so longs to pour that mercy upon us. It's confidence, nothing but confidence in His mercy, where we can cry out, my God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Jesus told Saint Faustina this, and we see it recorded in her diary. He says to her, the greater the sinner, the greater right he has to my mercy. He who trusts in my mercy will not perish. Imagine that. So if we realize how great we are in sinning, we have more right to God's mercy. God says this, the greater the sinner, the greater right he has to my mercy. But we like to put on masks, don't we? We like to think that we're better than we are. We don't like to look at our weakness, our frailties, our brokenness, our sickness, our sinfulness, our inability to keep our own resolves. Oh, I heard that you were starting this diet. How's that going? Yeah, great. Well, what's that you're eating? Is that a cookie? Yeah, that's part of the diet. It's the cookie diet, right? Haven't you heard that? We try to make ourselves look better because we know how weak we are and we can't stand it. So we try to cover it up so we don't have to see it, so nobody else has to see it. But God sees through it. He says, just come to me for mercy. Just cry out to me. So if our good works condemn us if we rely on them, does that mean we don't have to do good works? No. That's not what that means. Where is the place for good works in our salvation? Our good works become acts of love, where we give them to Almighty God. Back to St. Therese again. She said, I've seen myself as gathering flowers of love and sacrifice to offer to Almighty God. And this is one of my favorite images of St. Therese of Lisieux because I can see like this 3-year-old going out into the meadow and picking up the dandelions, picking up the clover flowers. You know those clover flowers that are kind of like this? They're so small. Picking up the bluets from the ground, the edelweiss, and bringing them into their parents. Now, a mother or father who receives this bouquet of wildflowers is not going to be saying, Really? You couldn't get me a rose or a lily or at least a daffodil? This is what you bring me? No parent would ever do that. No good parent would ever do that. Why? Because they see the love with which it is given. They see the love and their hearts are moved by that love. And so with God, we lift up our good works, our love, our sacrifices, which in the grand scheme of things are nothing. But we lift them up to God with love. We gather flowers to offer in love to our Daddy in heaven. And His heart is moved. I know I've shared this story many times before, but I love it so much. It always gets to my heart about Leo, who was in my last parish, telling me about his granddaughter as she came to him at 3 years old, and she put her hands on his face and said, "Papa, I have loved you since I was a little girl." And he just melts. "You want my house? Here are my keys. You want my car? Here. What do you want? Anything." And that's our God. But do we have that confidence to fly to Him, to run to His mercy? Do we have that confidence that even our works, our good works which are nothing in His sight, we can offer to Him in love, and it melts His heart? Let us today not be proud of the good works that we do, or even ashamed of our failures. Rather, let us run to God's love, crying out, "My God, have mercy on me, a sinner," and offering in love the little flowers of love and sacrifice to the heart of God.